you look at that, and when it shows the goods yard, you'll see loads of wagons rocked it all over.
I need to go back. Haven't been there a couple of years actually.
We'll have to report back next month.
Aye, happen.
So welcome everybody. We've got a couple of new faces which we're really pleased about, and hopefully you'll decide you want to come back and see us again. Kelly's history talks are every month. The piece of paper wasn't to reserve somebody's seat.
I don't because
It's Kelly messaged me and went, do you think our guys will cope with knowing it's a different week next month? I said, we'll put it on a piece of paper just so there's no excuses, okay?
yeah, that's right. I'm having a holiday. I do
She
apologise.
didn't ask permission.
We're going to be exploring the great and good of Rhythm. It's not like we're going anywhere exotic. No offence if anybody's from Rhythm. Apologise. But yes, it'll be the second Thursday, which I think
11th.
11th of July.
So today, sadly, we have to have brews, but we're going to hear about breweries. Beer. If we were allowed, there will
Don't
be.
think I didn't try. Don't think I didn't try.
You're
Okay.
having coffee instead of beer, aren't you?
It's the irony, you cannot get an alcohol licence for this place, and God knows I've tried. Thank
You don't need
you.
a license to be given to it.
No, they'll cancel my talk drive. Okay. You able to, sorry, Max, can you do that?
Sort it off.
Is that okay?
It's too dark about that.
Fab. Everyone can see that?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I beg your pardon, my dear lady. Could it be turned this way just an inch? It serves over there. pretty
Exactly
well.
1 inch.
1 inch, exactly 1 inch. Good, that's fine, yes.
Oh! Hold on, I need to move this.
Oh, yeah, it causes problems now.
How's doing?
Oh!
Right, set it down now.
There you
Is
go.
that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
If
It's okay over there.
If you ask me to move it back an inch,
Good, right.
I'll cry.
Goody.
Is that okay? It'll do, won't it? It'll do. Okay.
It's moving now.
So, thank you all very much for coming. This one is very much about beer. There's a bit about breweries, a bit about brewing. There's actually, because I always like, those who've been to quite a few of my talks, I do like to start with a bit of background, a bit of what is, and there is quite a lot on the history of brewing actually, but I promise we do get to Oldham related beer stuff, okay? Possibly, maybe about 7:45 or so, but no, there's a lot about the history, but I found it so interesting, and they're my talks, so I thought I'm going to talk about that. But yes. But you know, beer, it is proof that God loves us and indeed does want us to be happy. Or so my husband keeps telling me when he keeps bringing it home. So, yes, beer, very much the main character in tonight's talk. Okay, so...
No, can you straighten up a bit, please?
But just to run through the... So I think it's drunk. My talk's already a bit spiffy, so it's a bit like this, but we'll get through it, talk, don't worry.
There you go.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you. So we're going to do a little bit about what is brewing, but then, like I said, it kind of became a bit of a beast, this history of brewing, but I found it very interesting. A little bit about the Industrial Revolution, what did that do for brewing? Then Oldham Brewery, Yates's Wine Lodge, super interesting, very, very interesting. Bardsley Brewery, and actually I know that lots of you, if not all, are very, very local here. Bardsley Brewery, I didn't really have a huge amount of time to spend on that, but I think there's a lot more that I could find out. But if any of you know stuff that I don't mention, or, and I always feel I should preface my talks with this, if I say something that's not right, you know, hand on heart, nothing goes into my talks that I haven't checked and double checked, but mistakes happen, and if I did say something about Bardsley Brewery is the one that I didn't have a huge amount of time on, so if you know anything that I don't know, please do let me know. Then there's a bit about Oldham pubs. When I say pubs, I mean actually, because I was really interested in like old coaching inns. I'm not going to say anymore because that's like a little spoiler of some of the content. I don't know if any of you know about this. There was a mystery, this was many years ago, a mystery beer sampling in Oldham, which was so true and so funny you'd think it was something in like a Carry On film, okay? So we're going to come to that, and then I thought, oh, let's just finish with some fun facts about beer. Probably very little to do with history, but fun facts about beer, you know? And some of the stuff in there might win you a pub quiz, because they've got a very pub quiz feel about them. Okay, so without further ado, what is brewing? There we go, that's brewing. Ta-da! I mean, basically, brewing is the production of beer. You know, it is steeping, soaking a starch source, usually grains, and the most popular is barley, in water, and you ferment the resulting liquid with yeast. And there's various stages. Milling, that's where the grain is crushed, getting it ready for mashing and lautering. You've got mashing, that bit there, where the crushed grains are mixed with water, begins to look like porridge, breaks down proteins, extracts sugars. Lautering, this is where the mash is separated from any remaining grain. You've got mash out, recirculation, and sparging. Sparging, I like the sound of that, but it's nothing very exciting, it's just removing the sugar. The sparging. You've got boiling, where you have bittering hops that are added. Now the mash by now is called wort. Don't know why, but there you go, an important distinction. And then the important bit, fermentation. So yeast converts glucose to ethyl alcohol and carbon dioxide, which basically makes it alcoholic and fizzy. So the stuff that we like to drink. And then you have filtration and conditioning. That's pretty much the last stage, just getting rid of any last bits of gunk, making it all nice and ready for us to drink. And basically, that hasn't changed over the centuries. You know, the stages I've mentioned have more or less been there as far as we're aware, as long as beer has been being brewed. The main changes really over the years have been to like efficiency, mechanisation, all the fancy stuff that goes on nowadays. And, you know, I thought, should I go into a bit more detail about changes? And I thought, no, because that's really boring. So we're not going to. But I just want, you know, because like I said, it's quite a straightforward process, and it hasn't really changed since man first went, if I do this and that might be fun. So then, thinking about how old is the history of brewing? And the answer is actually quite difficult to know. So I was reading an article online, it was in the Washington Post in September last year, about how old is brewing. And they came to the conclusion, and I quote, beer is so old that we don't know how old it is. Fantastic. That's not going to be the pub quiz question that you're going to win, I'm afraid. So we don't know. What we do know, based on archaeological evidence, the process of brewing does date back as far as 13,000 years, which takes us into the Stone Age, okay? You know, people talk about cavemen, well, they've got one thing right, clearly, as well as like surviving cave lions and whatnot. So archaeologists found evidence of a beer-making operation in Israel, in a cave near a place called Haifa, that dates back at least 13,000 years. And the first actually chemically confirmed evidence of a fermented beverage, so that's where modern testing has confirmed the presence of beer, that's found in pottery in China, you have to forgive my pronunciations, in a place called Jiahu, and that dates back 9,000 years. And at another Chinese site, Kyoto, they found 9,000-year-old drinking vessels which contain beer remnants. So that is 9,000 years old, and they were drinking beer out of it. So the earliest known written reference to beer being brewed and drunk dates back 5,500 years to Mesopotamia, and that's an area roughly like where modern day Iraq, Kuwait, Turkey, and Syria are. So they found this tablet. So this is a Mesopotamian tablet dating 5,500 years. And I mean, I've looked at this in great detail, and apparently it depicts people drinking beer through straws. I mean, I'm no expert on ancient writing systems, I will take their word for it, but apparently that's what it shows. And you know, to be fair, beer brewed at this time, remember what I was saying about the later stages getting rid of all the gunk? Now we do all that mechanically nowadays, what we have for a couple of hundred years. 5,500 years ago, it's probably just been sieved out, so there probably was quite a lot of gunk in the beer. So yes, I can imagine the straws were used to get through that to the good stuff. And in Mesopotamia, beer, it was taken very seriously, okay? So much so, there was a code, a law code in Mesopotamia. Those who tainted beer batches or watered down the beer would be punished by death. Not just a slap on the wrist, you're actually going to die, mates. They took it very, very seriously. And there's a Sumerian proverb dated to around this time, which translates as, "He who does not know beer does not know what is good." Predating one of my husband's core beliefs by several thousand years. It has to be said. So what do we know about when beer started being brewed in Britain? So given what we know obviously about what was happening elsewhere in the world, and the fact that the British are fairly renowned for liking beer, I wouldn't imagine we were too far behind what was going on in China and in Mesopotamia. But there is less, we don't have evidence going back 13,000 or 5,000 years in Britain. The earliest physical evidence we have in Britain was actually only uncovered a few years ago in 2019. So the Highways Agency was doing some work, it's like a long-standing road improvement work in Cambridge. And they found, you know, various things as the digging up of archaeological interest. They found mammoths, like mammoth bones. They found Iron Age villages. And they also found fragments which from the beer making process. They found these fragments, they tested them. That's beer. That's 2,000-year-old beer, you know, which is absolutely amazing. And yeah, it dates back to about 400 BC. And this is one of the microscopic particles, as I said, that points to beer making, and it's thought to be the earliest known evidence for beer making, beer consumption in Britain. But we've also got wooden tablets that were found at Vindolanda, which is a Roman fort just south of Hadrian's Wall. These date to AD, between AD 90 and AD 130, and they mention the garrison buying beer from local suppliers. Again, I'm not an expert on ancient writing systems, but that's what they say. And they also mention a chap called Atractus the brewer. So Atractus the brewer is the first named brewer in the world. And he was here. Of course he was in Britain, just south of Scotland, just saying. I'm Scottish, I'm allowed to say that, okay? But anyway, this talk is not solely, I told you I got carried away with the history of beer, but I was like, wind it in, Anderson, it's not just about the history of beer brewing. But there are a couple of other bits I wanted to get just cover before we get to all the really good Oldham stuff. Just a couple of beer-related facts at this point. Women weren't just part of the brewing industry back in the day. They dominated it. It was a very female-dominated industry going back thousands of years, okay? Pre-industrial revolution, most beer and ale production, it was really small scale. Obviously we didn't have the big factories, we didn't have the massive breweries or anything like that that we have nowadays. So women were commonly known as alewives, and they did the brewing, they did it at home. So they would make enough for their family, and any surplus they'd sell. And some of these grew into, you know, small scale, but like local enterprises where they're selling surplus. And to show they had ale for sale, they would stick a broom outside the front of their front door. So I think that should happen more often.
We've got a broom outside.
We have, but darling, we drink it, we don't make it. So it's a slight difference there. But if you see a broom at 2 o'clock one morning and shit, you know, you're like, it's them again, it's them. Get that broom down.
No surplus at Kelly's house, is
Yeah, there's no surplus, rarely. It's like, where's it all gone? So yes, they would put the broom outside the front door, okay? And you know, back in sort of medieval times, you know, women weren't really supposed to do anything as mad as have a job, you know, goodness. But they did. This was seen, it was met with real social approval because the role of the housewife, the mother, was to provide for her family through food and water, and beer was absolutely part of that. So yeah, they just kind of, by selling the surplus, they were scaling up their proper job of being a wife and mother, and everyone, read men, was very happy with that. They weren't stepping out of where they should be. And the earliest written reference to beer being brewed in England dates to 1412, and it refers to beer made by a German alewife in Colchester. So big up for the ladies. And I really want to try and dispel a really common myth. This myth is never going to die, but I'm going to do my best. That people truly believe no one drank water in medieval times. Okay, they did. They drank gallons of water. Water was perfectly safe for the most part. The majority of people lived rurally in the country. There were no factories churning all manner of nastiness into rivers. Yeah, I mean, you probably weren't too careful of where the household waste went, but the water was absolutely fine. But people still think, oh no, people were drinking beer all the time because water wasn't safe. And there was someone very clever bods have done calculations and worked out that if it was true, if medieval people only really drank beer, 90% of crops grown at this time would have had to have gone into the beer making process to provide enough beer, leaving only 10% to feed the 5 million people who lived in in Britain at the time. So clearly didn't happen. And they've worked out that average adult peasants would only have drunk about 2.5 pints of beer a week, well within today's keeping healthy limits. And I mentioned ancient Mesopotamia introducing the death penalty for those guilty of tainting or watering down beer, and not just then, that was taken very seriously. In early 16th century Germany, there were laws to protect consumers from overpriced, tainted, watered down beer. Watering down of beer is just a theme that runs through history, okay? So clearly people are doing it, people are paranoid about it. It's very interesting. And so these German laws, they kind of set a maximum price per litre that landlords could sell for, because they didn't want landlords making too much profit. And if they were found to be overcharging or watering down their beer, they were very disappointingly only punished by having the barrel of beer confiscated. I mean, we've got the ancient Mesopotamians literally putting you to death, and Germany said, no, we're just going to take that. Oh, yeah, we'll just take that, shall we? Yeah. Yes, so it has been taken seriously for quite a period of time. Okay, so Industrial Revolution, what did that do for brewing? So as we've seen, prior to the Industrial Revolution, it was small scale. There were larger scale operations, but by and large, it was small scale. And actually, in the medieval era, do you know who, if it was being done on a larger scale, who was actually doing it?
Monks or something.
Yes,
like that.
it was, yeah, the monasteries. So the oldest medieval monastic brewery is said to be Weltenbury Abbey Brewery in Bavaria, Germany, which has been producing beer since 1050. It's almost 1,000 years. However, Weihenstephan Abbey, also in Bavaria, says 9. I was going to do a really bad German accent and not. But that abbey obtained a license to brew beer in 1040, 10 years before. Now, they cannot prove they started brewing before the other abbey, but they, to this day, claim they are the oldest brewery, and they have a massive rivalry. Brilliant. This is not from either of the abbeys, but it's just a very typical picture that appears in a lot of medieval manuscripts. I've got a very contemplative monk. He's just stirring it up, thinking about the goodness that will be forthcoming. Yeah. Praise the Lord. And the main product produced by abbeys was ale. And as I said, more or less done in the phases that I talked about earlier. The abbeys would have had a malt house, a kiln, a mill room, a brewery, storage cellar, you know, everything that was needed to store it, to drink it, and they sold again surplus. And monks and the clergy had a reputation, English monks and clergy had a reputation in medieval Europe of being basically raging alcoholics. The reputation they had,
Nothing is strange.
no, well it was on a par with the reputation that English football hooligans have nowadays, or certainly had in the 80s, in the 90s. Honestly, it is documented all over Europe that, OMG, right, the monks in Canterbury, have you heard what they were doing 6 months ago when it's taken that long for the lesson to get over, but they had a really bad reputation. So then, commercial brewing, as we kind of recognise it, that started happening more in inns and alehouses and started to become very heavily licensed from the 1550s. And being licensed meant that taxes were being paid, or the local magistrates seeing this growing industry are going, aha, we can make a bit of money here. And so the first large industrial breweries were in London, of course, huge, it was the hub, with massive working population down there, very happy to be spending their wages on beer and ale. And then latterly, as we moved up to the Industrial Revolution, when we've got more steam-powered techniques, there was this boom in factories, and some of these, breweries, these beer-producing places, were now using steam-powered pumps and mills, thus improving efficiency. And with the increase in mechanisation, you've got larger scale mass production techniques leading to more efficient beer production. So by the end of the 18th century, nearly all London breweries were fully mechanised, and that then started to spread out throughout the country from the early 19th century. And as the 1800s progressed, new breweries and additions to existing ones were designed, by engineers, by architects. Where have I missed a bit? Because I heard of a local. Maybe I'm coming up to that later. Trust the process, Kelly. You've got this. It was interesting. I hope I liked it. So we're just getting more and more of these large commercial operations. And so, finally, Oldham. What did this mean to Oldham? Well, I'm just going to have a little... This is just coffee up from this. That's vodka, but this is coffee. Thank you. Oldham. Undoubtedly there would have been smaller scale brewing operations in Oldham, of course there would. But the first industrial brewery was...
Samuel Smith.
Oh, Oldham Brewery was what I was hoping for.
Oldham.
Oldham, yes, Oldham Brewery in Oldham. What did you say, sorry?
Samuel Smith.
That's Yorkshire, isn't it?
I didn't ask a clear question. I meant in Oldham, that's my fault, I'm really sorry. That probably is the first one ever, so that's a pub quiz question, definitely. But I will ask clearer questions, sorry. And I think you said Bardsley, didn't you? Did someone say Bardsley? Maybe you didn't.
OB.
Right. Okay, right, so that's Oldham Brewery. Yes, this was founded in 1868 by Mr. William Boothby. It was called Albion Brewery. The actual brewery itself was called Albion Brewery and situated on Coldhurst Street in Oldham. Now, the earliest photo I've found of it dates to 1965 even. Oldham Brewery, and I've actually got some, I don't know if anyone's been Coldhurst Street recently, but I went out on a very rainy day the other week and stalked it like a weirdo and got lots of photos of what it looks like nowadays. But I can tell you that's all gone. But there's still, some lovely parts of it left that I could see. So that was this in 1965.
It was that factory.
Say again?
Hot factory.
Oh, a hat factory. So I think it's a hop factory.
Yeah, before we gave the brewery, it was a hot factory.
You should get there. You should come and do this talk. I did not know that. Hat
Yeah,
factory.
well, Oldham had a big industry.
It did, yes.
Out there, yeah.
We're talking about the beer tonight. I'll do the hat industry another time. So here's this fact that I wanted, and you're going to find it really boring now, but I liked it because I did a talk on the cotton mills, and I mentioned the Stott family of architects. It basically, if there was a cotton mill, it was the Stotts. But when they weren't designing cotton mills, they were designing breweries. They designed this brewery, which I thought was fantastic. So, Oldham Brewery brewed and sold OB branded beers. So, OB Bitter, this is just what I could grab off the internet. Some of them aren't great. OB Mild, Pale Ale, Old Gold, Brown Ale. I like this, yes! Stouts. Oh, Oldham Stouts. That was Oldham Stouts. And Old Tom.
I didn't know we did that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's barley wine.
I think they're brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And so the brewery had 136 tied public houses in Oldham and the surrounding area over the years. Mostly in Oldham, but you had Chadderton, Royton, Rochdale, Middleton, Saddleworth, Ashton, Springhead and Uppermill. Where were there not any OB pubs? Bardsley. Yeah, apparently not in Bardsley.
There was one in Barcelona.
No. Nearest one was the Hathershaw, I think you said. The Hathershaw was the nearest OB.
There's still a sign up there. We always notice that when we come down Berkeley Road. We say, hey, look at that. They're doing
Oh, the Hathershaw?
Yeah, it's still there, the sign. I know I don't know whether
Turning
they're
into
converting
flats.
it into flats.
Flats, yeah.
Yeah.
But the sign at the moment, well, last I saw, last I noticed,
Yeah,
it was still there, yes.
It's in the brickwork.
There used to be a line of
Yes.
cobbles.
As I noticed, I
There used
thought,
to be a
I'm gonna
line
have
of
to-
cobbles going across the road. On
I hope they don't take it down.
It went from Rose's Toffee Shop at an
I think
apple,
so.
Yes.
and she had to pay rates for Ashton and Oldham.
Oh, blimey. It's not there anymore.
Well, we know they are for us.
But I'll go and have a look at that.
Yes, well, that's
Yeah.
the looked.
Yeah, you do
Not
that.
long ago, you know.
Yeah, I'll be hunting like, where is she? She's banned. She's banned. Yeah,
Yeah,
first year.
First
Yeah.
Year Road.
Because we have to come all the way down to
Yeah.
where we live. Yeah.
Fine. I know, I love that
Yeah,
stuff.
just look at that.
Well, because I was reading that there's a pub in Ashton. There was a pub in Ashton in an article I read, but the article was like from 1987 and it was talking about this pub in Ashton that has OB branding all over it. And it was saying in 87 it's still there and it's lovely. Cannot find it. I think the pub's changed its name. So I need to, anyway, I need to hunt it down, but I will have a look
You'll
at
see
that.
it's still, I think it's still there.
Okay. No pressure, lady.
I better have a look on the way home.
It's still
Bottom end of Old
It's still
Street.
there.
Kelly,
So,
bottom end of Old Street.
bottom end of Old Street.
Yeah. It used to be called the Globe at one time.
Oh, is that the pub?
Yeah. And then they changed its name to something like Fighting Cock or something like that. Game
I'll
Cock.
have a look.
And then
Okay.
I think they changed it again.
Fab, I'll have a look. Thank you. Right, anyway, so Oldham Brewery, it was bought by Boddingtons in 1982, and as part of that sale, an agreement was made that the brewery would stay open for at least a further 5 years, and that the brand would remain. So the brewery was closed for good in 1988, 70 jobs lost sadly, and the building was partially demolished, and like I said, I went out in the tipping rain T'otherweek. So, if you, oh no, I've put all these in. Right, people, imprint that on your memory because I'm not going back to it. But that was that bit, okay? All that's gone. Yeah, I then added all these afterwards. I just, like obviously this is like lockups or whatever it is now, but I just thought that was lovely, but that's the closest I could get. But then that building's, that part of it's still there. So, it really is.
What street do you say that's on?
Coldhurst.
Comes up from Boothhill Lane, you just follow it all the way up to Old to the top.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a shame. But there's still some gorgeous parts of it left. I mean, that bit in the middle is just like corrugated nonsense. But really pretty. So,
Is it?
possibly. So, like I said, Boddingtons was bought by Whitbreads in 1990s, and the OB brand went the way of the dodo. However, in 2006, Robinson's Brewery bought the OB brands, and OB Bitter is now on sale in Robinson's pubs and in some guest pubs as well, and in other pubs as a guest ale. Robinson's, incidentally, is a Stockport brewery founded in 1849.
That's where I'm from. My grandparents used to live right near the brewery, and they had beautiful big Shire horses. which we used to go and look at, my sister and I, when we were young. You know,
Yes.
yeah, that's where I
Oh, how lovely.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, there we go. So they've resurrected, partially really, the OB brand. So you still can see it, but yeah, the rest, unfortunately, no longer with us. Okay. So Yates's Wine Lodge. Who remembers it on High Street?
I've been in there.
Well, I probably should ask.
We don't found it there.
I probably should ask who doesn't remember it, because that's always the best nights out when you're like, I've no idea what I got up to, no idea what happened. Order. We're not in the pub now, thank you very much. Okay. So, I don't know how many of you are familiar with this story, but Yates's is a proper Oldham success story and the oldest pub chain in Britain. I tried to find out, I'm sure it must be the oldest, one of the oldest in the world, but Google wouldn't tell me that, so I don't know. So the family, the original family were actually originally from Rochdale. And so there was a gentleman called Simon Yates, who was the landlord of an inn called the Grey Horse in Rochdale, and his sister, a lady called Mary Addison, worked very closely with him. And Simon died in 1860 at the age of 36, and he had 3 children, Peter, Simon Jr., and a daughter called Susanna. Peter was 4 when his father died. Don't know exactly how the other 2 were, but I think they were all quite young. Their mum, Jane, very much alive and well, but their aunt, Mary Addison, stepped in and really took a firm interest in the children and arranged for them all to have a very good schooling. This later involved travel abroad. So, well, for Peter and Simon, they were like, Susanna, you don't need to have any excitement in your life. Because Peter went to Spain to learn about wine, because remember, Aunt Mary, well, and their father had been in the booze industry. Peter went to Spain to learn about wine, and Simon went to America to learn about business methods. Now, Mary, she's such an interesting character. She'd married young at the age of 18, and she was later deserted by her husband. And partially, I think, as a result of that, in 1865, she received a divorce settlement of £3,000. A huge amount then. That's equivalent to about £500,000 nowadays.
Yeah.
So she used some of this money to buy the Grey Horse in Rochdale, which Peter managed. And she also bought the 18th century Angel Hotel, which dated to at least 1770, which was at 8A High Street in Oldham, where Yates's later stood. And in 1881, so she bought that in 1881, which Simon Jr. managed. And he actually was licensee for 2 stints between 1884 and 1944, and his son held the license until 1953. So in 1884, Peter and Simon, along with Susanna, their sister, formed Yates Brothers and Company, and in that year opened the world's first Yates's Wine Lodge at the Angel Hotel on High Street in Oldham. And within 20 years, they had 20 Yates's Wine Lodges in Oldham and the surrounding areas, and at one point there were 3 in Oldham. And the real selling point of Yates's Wine Lodge was that it specialised in wine that was very unusual at the time. Not necessarily the highest quality, but it was cheap and it was alcoholic. 2 things still very dear to our hearts, quite frankly. Is it booze and is it cheap? Love it. And it was novel, and they purposefully kept the prices low because they wanted working men and women to be able to afford them. And that's it. And you were telling me about the Yates's blob.
Yeah, the blob was famous.
I don't remember that myself, but...
Yeah. No, they had the blob shop, which they had it in Manchester City Centre.
So I'm too young.
Oh,
Yeah.
you couldn't get a blob in Oldham.
Sorry?
You could not get a blob in Oldham.
I didn't live in Oldham.
Oldham was you couldn't.
I went
If
to
you asked for a
Manchester.
blob, they just turn around and say, we don't serve them here. Get
Well,
out.
fair enough. So at its peak,
Australian up white, all in.
At its peak, Yates's had 170 pubs across Great Britain, and it's actually, there's really conflicting information today. I think there's only about 23 Yateses left, but a lot of them were taken over by Slug and Lettuce. So there could be about 70 in all but name. So Yates's Wine Lodge dropped the Wine Lodge part of its name in 2005, so it's just Yates's. The company that owns them, they thought it sounded a bit stuffy. And to be fair, they said, everyone calls it Yates's anyway. Certainly I did. There's no way, let's go to Yates's Wine Lodge. Let's get our Yates's.
Yeah, they had a teetotal part at the back.
Hold that thought, young Philip. Hold that thought.
Yeah.
Hold it. Okay. Which I call you Roy 2. Okay. So, of the 23 or so Yateses that are still up and running, there isn't one in Oldham. And there hasn't been since the 1990s when the pubs were closed, when the pub closed. And the historic building of the Angel Hotel was scandalously demolished years ago. And what do we have in its place?
Sure.
Oh shoot, I've missed some.
You
I've got this. No, it's a McDonald's.
Oh,
Where the McDonald's is, that's okay. I've got ahead of myself. So here's some photos of potentially not seeing these. So this is the Oldham Yates in 1927.
Friendly.
Yeah. It's very Jack the Ripper-esque, isn't it? No? I can prove it. I can. Other than just take my word for it. I'm a historian, okay? But I can't prove it. So this is undated, but 50s, 60s. Okay? So that was demolished, like I said. And then a new building was put in its place. So that's the new building. It's certainly, but it was built in the same place.
Yeah.
And you can kind of see there is still the road that went down there because this is before like Spindles and before it was all redeveloped. Okay, so keep an eye on that bit. So 50s or 60s, and then this was taken. Doesn't that look like a splendid watering hole? That was taken in 1990. Like I said, it is still on the same site. It's just the whole of the urban area has been changed. But now it's all gone, and we have McDonald's. But see that? So you can see, and that was on the same site. They demolished it and rebuilt it, and so that shows you it's all been remodelled, but it's the same site. So that's what we have instead of this wonderful. Angel, I'm not saying disrespect to Yates's, but I mean it looked a bit ropey, I have to say, you know. But yeah, we have McDonald's instead. So the company was taken over by the Dixon and Yates family in 2004, then it was sold again in 2005, taken over in 2011, so it's had a bit of a history. So just a couple of bits. Like I said, Mary Addison is really interesting, Auntie Mary, who really, I think, should be credited with an awful lot of the Yates success. And if she'd been an Oldham lass, I'd probably done a talk on her, but she's Rochdale, so she's off. She's off limits, we can't. But she has been described as the greatest female wine merchant of the Victorian era. And when she died in 1900, she left an estate valued at that time of £31,000, equivalent to about £4.5 million nowadays. And as for Peter Yates, the ethos of the early Yates' wine lodges was to offer low-cost alcohol for working people to afford and enjoy. But Peter was teetotal, okay? He encouraged the growth of alcohol-free taverns. I can't see that really doing well in Oldham, quite frankly. But he was teetotal, and his personal motto was moderation in true temperance. And to be fair, he was literally days short of his 90th birthday when he died. So there may be something to say for refraining from booze. Not that current day Yateses would care. Their slogan is all day long. Peter is probably spinning in his grave. It's true, it's true. So Bardsley Brewery. So obviously I couldn't really talk about Oldham beers and breweries without mentioning Bardsley Brewery, but I don't have a huge amount of information about it. I know it was founded in 1832 by Robert Bentley and a Mr. Carr. In 1902, it was owned by Messrs. Shaw and Bentley, and then it was sold with 40 tied houses to a company called Rothwell Limited, and they continued brewing there until just after the First War, and it closed in 1918. I mean, that's a potted but it opened, like I said, in 1832. The reason I didn't say it was the oldest, Oldham one, because at the time it was in Ashton. And a hair's split, but you know, I like to try and be factually correct. But this is an undated. Oh no, it's not. I'm really winning with my slides tonight. There's a plaque above your McDonald's. There is a plaque. It's not very, because it's really high up. Again, pouring with rain, and I'm trying. People are like, why is she photographing McDonald's? I'm not as history, but there is a plaque commemorating that the first Yateses were built on that site, also opened on that site in 1884. This is Bardsley Brewery. Oh, that looks like a palace.
Hey?
Yeah.
Like a football
It
ground.
looks-
Still there.
No, I know. I know. Don't shout at me, I know it's still there. But I mean, that just looks absolutely amazing. I mean, so it's undated, but you know, because this is literally just down the road, and you've got this aerial photo taken in 1930, showing it there. But what I like, I think this was so you can see here, Ashton Road. Now I know that's about 1840s, Ashton Road maybe, because if you look here, the roads, this looks like a main road, is going right by. So I think it was kind of situated on the main road as it was at the time, but yeah, and I know it's now residential. So I need to go down and make friends with someone there, so I can have a proper routal about it. But you know, I think that's absolutely fantastic.
Is that Springwood Hall?
Yeah, I think Springwood, yeah, Hall.
I don't think that's an accurate drawing of it.
So, like I said, I found this, it said it was
don't
Bardsley
think it's an
Brewery.
accurate drawing of it.
It's roughly the same shape though.
It's approximately the same shape.
But anyway, but that's all I've got on Bardsley Brewery. But that, I think, explains, because I've only lived here a few years, and everyone talks about I say I'm always doing this, I'm always pointing, I'm pointing to Daisy Nook, if that's where it is, I always point in the wrong direction, but you know the bit, and they call it the brew, but I always thought, well, why don't you call it the brow? It's the brow of like the hill or something surely, but the brew, Bardsley Brewery, that makes sense. You're not just odd, which I kind of thought when I first moved here. Okay, so I'm going to have to get cracking. Right, moving on to Oldham pubs. So, sorry, let's go take a quick drink.
Well, that makes sense, because the Daisy Field, I said it was Rockwell's, right? Told you that.
You did?
So that the Daisy Field was more. If you look at the foundation stone
Oh, the Daisy Field.
on the Daisy Field, as you're going in at the door, it says somebody breeds and one. So I bet if you inquire, I bet they are the heads of what was Bardsley Brewery.
Could well be, yeah. Well, if you
Or they
think,
were taken over.
I mean, it's because Keb Lane's just going to be so. I always like this photo because you can see my house on the photo. My house is just there. Please don't stalk me. But that means.
Well, that'd be careful.
That's careful.
That's careful because that's Oldham Lane next, and then you've got the rise.
Oh no, sorry, up here. Sorry, that's my house up there. Yeah, sorry, no, I don't live in the industrial unit. I really do need a drink.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
my house is up there. That's it. Anyway, right. So you can stalk me because I won't be there. But moving on to Oldham pubs then. So in 1869, Oldham had 258 beer houses and 168 public houses. That's a lot of drinking establishments. Now I read that and then I was curious as to what the difference was between a beer house and a public house. So I mentioned earlier that alcohol became licensed from the 1550s, i.e. that taxes paid on it, which obviously impacts the selling price. So the Beer Act of 1830 removed all duty on beer, which meant if you obtained a licence to run a beer house, literally selling just beer, that was cheaper than having a full licence to run a public house that sold beer, wines and spirits. And that distinction remained in place legally in this country until 1960. So under current English law, a pub is a public house licensed to sell wines, beers, spirits and basically any alcoholic drink. An ale house, not a beer house now, but an ale house is a public house that can sell beer, cider and wine. no spirits. So if you're in one and there's no spirits, then it is legally an ale house. And I will not be there because I drink vodka. And a free house is the same as a public house, except it's not tied to a brewery and it can sell whatever the heck it wants. So as to why Oldham had so many drinking establishments, very good reason. Okay, so the two reasons. The first one, the rise of the coaching industry. So an act in 1753 put a turnpike road in Oldham on the Manchester to Osterlands coaching route, and in 1790 Oldham became a stopping point on the Manchester to Wakefield coach route. So with coaches specifically stopping at Oldham, as with many other towns around the country, coaching inns started for people to stay overnight, and where people are staying, we'll serve them alcohol. And in 1825, there were dozens of them. As I've said, the Angel Inn, the earliest known reference to it is 1770, but it more than likely predates that. You also had the Three Horseshoes Inn, which opened on Huddersfield Road in Oldham Months in 1823. This is an undated photo, but definitely taken before 1968, as that's the year the inn was demolished. Okay, but had been there from 1823. In 1890, it had become the headquarters of Oldham Cycling Club, which I love, just like today. Bit of exercise, head to the pub, lads. That's what we're doing. And then you had the Red Lion and the Bull's Head. They were also two very early 19th century coaching inns in Oldham Monks. By the way, do you say Oldham Monks or do you just say monks?
Monks.
You just say monks. Right, I wasn't sure. Sorry, thank you. Love you guys. So the Red Lion, I know nothing about it other than it existed. The Bull's Head, unfortunately, very derelict. Now,
Top of Britain Road, isn't it?
so this is from 2022 and it has been scheduled to be demolished and replaced by housing. Is it still actually there at the moment?
Yeah, I walked past there the other day.
It's over 200 years old, that building. And it's just, look at it, it's such a shame. But I don't know that area at all. Is there no footfall? Is it?
No, there's quite. I mean, you've got another like a restaurant sort of King's Arms.
Yeah.
Kells, we've gone past it.
Oh, have we?
No, we go past it when we go up to. I've forgotten where it is now. But we go past that a few
Okay.
times.
I was going to have to be looking for it, but it's a shame when you think. You just drive past it and think, well, it's just a scabby old pub.
If you turn,
But it's a really early part of our history.
if you turn left where that car's going, it's the Black Lad.
It's a black lad door, yeah.
Right.
Then that comes down to shore.
Okay.
Yes, it's Denshore, Kel. We go past it to go to Denshore.
Fine. I will keep an eye out for it.
It'll be gone.
It'll be gone. Okay. Right. Just like my time slot if I don't get to ring along. So the Pack Horse Inn, so Angel Inn, High Street, where McDonald's is, there was another coaching inn of the same age called the Pack Horse Inn, so somewhere around here, or maybe a bit further up, there was an inn.
Pack Horse Inn.
The Pack Horse.
What's called, it changed its name to the Albion.
Okay, mister. You two. Zip it. Alright?
Have you mentioned the Swan?
I will challenge you to next month when you come to the door. Platt Brothers. I want 5,500 words. So the Pack Horse, yes, was somewhere around here. In 1835, you're not going to believe this, changed its name to the Albion. Yeah? Thank you. And in the 1850s...
Then it fell down.
Well, I don't know about that, but I know that Mr. William Boothby started brewing here in the here, wherever it was, the Albion, in the 1850s. He outgrew the premises and moved to Coldhurst Street and opened the Albion Brewery, named after the coaching inn. Now, while Mr. Boothby, this is a true story, was waiting for the licence on the new premises on Coldhurst Street, some stonework fell off the roof, a policeman was passing by, it hit him and he died. And it really threatened to scupper his licence application, you know, but luckily it did get approved and all, you know, the rest, as they say, is history. But the pack horse, as it was before, well, no, actually, it would have been after it became the Albion. In the 19th century, it was a very popular meeting point for political agitators. So again, a few cheeky drinks to get those political, all coming up to July the 4th, I'm sure, well, we're all going to step away from that. But yes, okay, you've got the Royal Oak on, Union Street. This opened in 1824, and I found a fun fact that the toilet block was added in 1937. Don't want to think too much about that.
The Royal Wall.
So the Royal Oak, I swear to God, Roy, you say one fact about that, and we shall fall out, my friend. So this is actually a Grade 2 listed building, and by all accounts, it is very beautiful and very well preserved inside. Unfortunately, I couldn't go to check it because it closed last year. It was sold and it was closed. Now, because it's Grade 2, the council have a duty to care for its upkeep. And earlier this year, a group of locals who were outraged about it being closed, they basically had it listed as an asset of community value, which means that it has to remain a building that the community can use, and it also means the current owners, if they decide to sell, they have to offer it to the community group first for them to buy. So they're basically in the process of raising funds, waiting for it to come up for sale so they can buy it, and the plan is to reopen it. So like I said, apparently it's gorgeous inside.
The bar's protected, the bar itself is protected. But unfortunately the owners, like you said, that's all going on. The owners have been in and ripped a load of pipes out and it all flooded. So it's as if they're trying to demolish it from the inside by accident.
Sabotage.
Yes.
Yeah, sabotage.
Well, the council, like I said, because of its listing, you know, so hopefully I'd like to think they'd be on that, but yeah, that's a shame, it's a real shame. And then, so you've got a very interesting named old coaching inn that was built in the early 19th century, the Upsteps Inn. Do you recognise the name?
Yeah.
It's it's a Spoons. Now I'm taking the photos of McDonald's and where the pack horse was, and I turned and I'm walking down. I walked past it, but I'd never been to it in my life. I knew it was on the high street, and I probably walked about half a mile in the pouring rain. I'm like, where are those things? So I asked somebody. I've gone past the cinema and I'm walking down. I'm thinking, oh, I'm not sure about this. And I asked some lovely person. They were like, oh, just up there, love. About half a mile. Well, I don't know how far I was. So that was a very crossly taken. I'm like, very cross. So we've got the Upsteps Inn. It is indeed a Spoons pub. Now there was a pub, an original coaching inn here, and it was built above street level, literally a set of steps up, and it's what it took its unusual name from. It was called the Upsteps Inn. Now I believe, so local people, is this part of Oldham Rhodes Bank?
No, you're all tonight.
Right. So this is not a photo.
That's Rhodes Bank.
Yeah, that's Rhodes Bank. But I thought I'd found a photo of the original Upsteps, but that tells me it's not them, because I wasn't sure if that was Rhodes Bank or not, so we'll ignore that one. That is, like I said, the Upsteps, but like if you from the side, I should have included a photo, you can actually see more of it, because obviously it's slightly above street level, but you can really see from the sides, like where maybe the original entrance was, just how above street level it is. But yes, so this, the original Upsteps was demolished in the 1920s at the request of the police. They asked that the licence was not renewed and that the pub was demolished, so I so need to know what had happened for them to do that. But then when the modern Wetherspoons was built, they kept the name, you know, which I think is a really nice nod to Oldham history there. And the second reason, I said there were two, for there being so many drinking establishments, well over 400 in Oldham in 1869, because again, in 1801, the 1801 census, there were only 12,000 people living in Oldham. So do you need 400 odd pubs? I'm not answering that question. But by 1861, the census, there were 72,000 people living in Oldham with the boom in the cotton mill industry. So that's a lot more people wanting a pint after an honest and very grimy day's work, so hence the number of drinking establishments.
Well, the pubs were packed out in the 60s.
So yeah, a lot of the
Every
Oldham,
pub, every night they were packed out.
yeah.
No.
You on these Oldham groups on Facebook, and it's all back in day, and you know, it's brilliant.
I got
But-
a whole picture.
Yeah, but there we go. So I told you there was this mystery beer sampling that took place in Oldham, and I love it. It took place sometime in the 60s, and it was basically about watering down beer and consequences for unscrupulous brewers, okay? This practice had not disappeared over the centuries, going back 5,500 years when the Mesopotamians were saying stop it, or else you will really regret it. So, again, there's slightly contradictory information. The bones of it are true, but it's all true, but some accounts differ. But basically, in the 1960s, early 1960s, a mystery man visited several pubs in and around Oldham with the sole purpose of checking if they were watering down their beer. Now, I don't know if he was a peed off local who was just really cross with landlords getting away with this. Maybe he was sent by a brewery. Maybe he was a customs and excise agent.
Well,
You know.
it was custom access.
There we go. Was it you, Roy?
Eh?
Tell us it was you. It was me. So, but yeah, okay.
I remember going to show, and what they did was they had glasses, bottles, like little jam jars, and they put it in and they give the landlord one.
All right.
You see, he signed it, sealed it, give the landlord one, and they took one. So it's, and then when they had it analysed, and it would, he'd got
Just to
his,
check and see.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But whoever this mystery man was, whoever it was, he's never been identified, but his investigation bore fruit. And to be fair, kind of research I'd imagine lots of us would like to do. Oh no, I have to go to the pubs and drink beer. All in the name of good honest work. So he reported 12 pubs to the police after doing his research. And they took it seriously because they then involved customs and excise, who visited a total of 20, it was either 20 or 25 pubs in and around Oldham. And it turned out, surprise, surprise, some of them were watering down their beer. So I don't know how many were found to have been implementing this practice, but 10 of them were prosecuted, and they were all fined £15 plus 1 guinea cost. And pre-decimalisation, I'm genuinely far too young, but a guinea was £1 and 1 shilling. And to be fair, it was an honest mistake, Gov. They weren't necessarily all committing frauds. They did argue that an awful lot of it was by accident. Now, some of these were very far-fetched. So some of the reasons given included, one landlord said he had beer in a bucket, accidentally knocked it over, and water got into it. And I'm like, if you knock the bucket over,
the water jumped in.
I mean, it makes no sense to me, but that was the reason that was given. Another said, oh, the beer was muddy when it was being pumped, so I thought that by law I was allowed to add lemonade to it to make it less muddy. It wasn't the law, you weren't allowed to do that. And a few landlords argued that water must have got into the pumps when they were being cleaned, which, hey, there is definitely plausibility there. How much? A drop, you know, per pint, you know, and they're sort of arguing, oh, it's probably about, you know, half a litre got into, go out of the pumps, yeah, we cleaned them very well. But they were all, like I said, they were all found guilty and they're all fined. And it's such an interesting local story. It really is. And I just love the idea of this mystery. I was hoping it was just someone who'd like, that's it, I've had enough of watered down beer, I'm dobbing you all in. And one last point, just to finish this story, it was noted that when watering down did happen to beer in pubs, it happened on a Saturday afternoon. It more commonly happened on a Saturday afternoon. Rather coincidentally, Customs and Excise officers did not work after midday on Saturdays, so I'll just leave that there. And so I thought I'd finish this talk with some fun facts about beer. Like I say, if you ever win a future pub quiz, you have to share the voucher with me. At the end of 2023, there were 45,200 pubs in the UK, highest number of any country in the world, followed by Japan, Germany, Spain and the United States. And of these 45,200, there's around 175 in Oldham and surrounding areas, down from the 426 in 1869. Downing Street, okay, now the political hub of the UK, 4th of July. But the first known building to have stood on Downing Street was a brewery called the Axe Brewery that was owned by the Abbey of Abingdon in the Middle Ages. Very little known, it had fallen into disuse by the 1500s, but could explain some of the decisions made inside. Couldn't resist that one. In 2022, average consumption of beer in the UK was 68 litres per head, that's 119 pints, an average of 2.2 pints per week, which surprised me. Less than the average person in the medieval times. They were drinking 2.5 pints of beer a week. So, wow, when it says about modern day, I was going to say modern day man, being very sexist there. So clearly statisticians have not been to my house. Look pointedly at Marcus and Britain. The booziest city in the UK is Bristol, and the most alcoholic area up north is not Manchester or Oldham, but Yorkshire. And I will leave you with the most expensive beer in the world. So this is Arctic Ale. And a bottle of this beer sold in 2007 for $500,000. So these were brewed, so I don't know which year this comes from, so some bottles were brewed for an 1875 expedition to the Arctic, some were brewed in 1851 as a life-sustaining support for sailors in search of lost expeditions. Love it. Right, have we got the warm weather gear? Check. Have we got the huskies? Yeah. Have we got the beer? Please, okay? So whichever one that came from, this is what sold for $500,000. And I am dying to know if it's sat in someone's safe or if they drank it. I so hope someone drank it. You're gonna go big or go home, I say, okay? You're gonna buy that for $500,000, you're gonna drink it,
Yes.
okay?
No, you're not.
No, you're probably not. It's in someone's safe somewhere. And that is it. Thank you all very much.
We just went big, we're not going home. All your talks are fabulous, but I know personally, I think that's the best ever yet.
No, stop it. Come on. What do you all think?
So,
Mumps.
Oh, yes.
You know where it gets its name from?
No, I don't.
Tramps.
Tramps.
Yeah, tramps.
As in dirty fellas.
Tramps on the road. Tramping about. Mumps. It's another word for
Oh, that was a
tramp.
word for that. Oh. It always makes me think of that illness that boys shouldn't get, because it does things.
Yeah, mumps gets its name from.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, the
No, I
tramp,
didn't.
we are definitely going to challenge you to do a talk of some sort for the centre sometime in the next few months.
I know I make it look easy, Roy. I know I make it look easy.
Yeah, it's not easy.
But
Well,
yeah.
something else over people.
Next month, well, what are you thinking? So next month is the second Thursday, because I am really sorry going away with the world's most ungrateful dog who hates going on holiday, but we drag her once a year. It's probably going to be on, what did I say it's going to be on? The Platt Brothers. No.
No, I can't remember now.
What road?
Yeah, the engineering
All the
firm.
textile
But I
engineering.
promise it's a lot more interesting than that potentially sounds, okay? And I'll make it really interesting.
So just,
But
just before, I know people need to go.
Sorry, yes.
We're starting chair exercise sessions.